That is a horrendous question right there.
Hi, this is Lucy and this is...
Jesse!
Do you know the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility?
Yeah. Spider-Man, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yes. I think that it's a great quote. I think that it has a lot of value. I think that anyone that has the power to make a difference really does have that responsibility to try to better people. The most wasted potential that a human being could have is to have the power to do something and just not do it. Being the change that you want to see in the world means that if you want to see something, you should fight for it into whatever degree that you have the power to do, if that makes any sense at all.
Would you say that this would apply in a relationship between someone who's more powerful and someone who's more vulnerable, like a child and a parent or something like that?
So in a sense, the person that has more power has more responsibility, such as like that parental figure. Well, definitely, and definitely like in the sense of like parenthood itself. Like when it comes to like parenthood, children who are young and growing and developing into like this kind of human being, they need responsible role models. And if you are like that parent or that figure or like that like guardian, definitely, yeah, you do have that responsibility.
Okay, so what would be the bare minimum that you would expect from, for example, a babysitter, like taking care of a child for like a month, for example? What would be the bare minimum that you need them to do or not do?
The bare minimum? Yeah, don't kill the kid. That's the bare minimum that you can do. The bare minimum is just don't lose them. Just don't lose that kid.
Keep them alive.
Yeah.
Are you feeling good so far?
Aces.
Yeah, awesome. Do you eat or purchase any animal bodies or secretions like cows, sheep, or whale leather, wool, things like that?
Yeah, all the above. Yeah, definitely.
Would it be okay if I show you a 3-minute video on the standard practices in animal agriculture?
Sure, let's see.
Awesome.
All right, that's the end.
Sorry.
It's a tough video. Yeah. It's a horrific video that you just showed. There's a lot of demand for animal byproducts, for these meats, for eggs, for chickens, for ham, for everything like that. It's an invisible thing that you just kind of don't think about when you're in a grocery store just picking up things. And I definitely think that if more people were aware of just like how much goes into it, I think that everyone just hears the stories, and I don't think that everyone's just like aware of like the process that goes into it entirely. I feel like if more people were aware of it, more people would be a little bit disgusted by it. It's tough to watch a video like that and not empathize and be a little mortified by that, by the process.
How do you think the animals feel in the video?
Not good. Very bad. It's very inhumane enclosures, and I can't imagine that anyone is living a good life in those kind of confinements.
So, all right. So, kind of going back to earlier in the conversation, we were talking about, power and responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of bring that back in the conversation. Would you say it's fair to say that we have power over these animals and they are vulnerable to us?
Definitely, yeah. The larger companies and those larger ranchers and breeders that are doing these kind of conditions right here have all the power over those animals.
When we talked about power between, like in a relationship between an adult and a child, for example, we said, well, the bare minimum was like keeping them alive, right?
Yes. The practice of that industry right there, and their end goal is to build up animals, acquire animals, raise them, kill them, get the meat, get all that stuff. And that's the end of the business right there, is that's their end goal, is to make sure that there is meat, that there is chicken, that there is eggs and everything. It's a little bit different from a babysitter's point of view, because a babysitter is supposed to be taking care of, is the direct goal of taking care of a child, whereas this is the direct goal of harvesting animal products. Now, can it be said that while these animals, these living beings are in their custody, should they be given a more humane and better lifestyle? Definitely. That's in their power, and they have the capacity right there. All that they want to do is just keep that engine turning and keep those numbers up. They don't really have to, they're not even told to care about those animals, so they don't.
What you said about the babysitter situation being different, I agree, of course, because the goals are different, right? Like the only, I guess the similarity to me is the fact that they're vulnerable to a more powerful, in a relationship.
Sure.
My question then would be, okay, it's a challenging one, all right? How do you humanely kill someone who doesn't want to die?
How do you humanely kill someone that doesn't want to die? Someone or something? I guess, it's a weird distinction. Okay. How do you humanely kill someone that doesn't want to die? How do you humanely kill someone that doesn't want to die? A lot of people say that it's without pain, and a lot of people say that it's so long as that they don't know or they're not suffering, and that we have an idea that the last moment should be peaceful. At peace, in your sleep, or surrounded by loved ones or something like that, just like a quiet passing. But really, there's not a humane way to kill something that doesn't want to die, is I think the end point that you want to get to, isn't it? Yeah.
If one of these animals in the video in the slaughterhouse, like they could understand you and they could speak to you, and they asked you, why is this happening to me? What would you tell them?
That is a horrendous question right there. Okay. If they asked why this is happening, you just gotta be truthful. You just gotta tell them, look, you're in a horrendous situation, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's just because we want the byproducts, we want the meat, we want this. In a scenario where it's just me being able to answer their questions that they want to know, you just got to be truthful with them. That's all that you can do. Because the more you try to coddle them, the less sense it makes, and it's not a humane way to answer that question.
Let's say aliens farmed you, and you ask them that question. What would be the response you give them to that? What you just said.
Oh, so if I'm the farm animal. Yeah, I don't know what I'd say. I don't know if I would have a response to it. I think I'd just take it in. Because you don't really, there's no way that you can. I don't know what to do with it.
So if you were one of these animals in the video or in the slaughterhouse, how quickly would you want this to stop? Like the industry,
Oh, right away. If I was one of the animals, of course, yeah.
So do you think we need to eat animal bodies or secretions to be healthy?
No. And there's definitely a lot of things that are great substitutes. I'm also a very big fan of biologically growing animal meat. I don't see a difference in the quality of the meat or anything like that. And you just test tube meat. I can definitely get behind that. I definitely think that there is an end in sight to the cruel treatment of animals and things. And it really comes down to what kind of pressures can we put on these industries and what kind of legislation we can do.
Actually, this is perfect segue. I want to ask you. So yeah, my question would be, what do you think we can do for these animals as individuals?
It's a situation where there's not much that you can do as an individual. If you take it upon yourself to say, look, I'm just going to be vegan, I'm not going to do anything that I can associate with this, that's totally a lifestyle that I can get behind, in the sense where it's I don't have to be a part of this animal suffering. I just don't think that does much on an individual scale. It takes organization, it takes collectivization, and it takes a little bit of pressure from above. If you want to really see an end to that kind of industry, you really just have to put the restrictions in place that are necessary to get them to stop.
All right, so something that I learned when I started researching these things when I became vegan, that's really cool, is that, a vegan saves according to different estimates, so that's why it's a large gap, between 30 to 600 lives per year, depending on if you're eating little animals or, just one vegan, between 30 to 600 lives.
Do you believe that animal, that those are 30 to 600 animals that would have been killed that are not killed because of one vegan, or is it animals that are still being killed that vegan is not responsible or has no association with or anything like that, despite the fact that like people individually can like remove themselves from that kind of industry. I just don't really see that the industry doesn't kill the animal anyways.
It all works with supply and demand, right?
It does.
So there is a problem with subsidies, especially in the US, right? When actually it kind of doesn't work as much like this. But the more vegans we make, the more it's gonna be hard for them to maintain the subsidies. Supply and demand really does hurt them. It really does like make them, because all they care about is making money. They don't really care what they're doing, like what they're producing. So if they make plant-based products or like animal products, they don't really care, right? So the goal is to push them in the direction of vegan products. It's like, what have you seen the difference in vegan products on the market in these last 10 years compared to before?
Yes. Well, yeah, there's a much bigger demand for them. And that's just because so many more people are in the market for things that aren't from these industries. So I see, yeah, you're totally right in that sense, yeah.
And we're very few. So and there's a lot of non-vegans that like really like these things as well, so that helps. You know, like I totally understand what you mean with the legislative thing, and I think that is definitely something we're gonna need to work on, and it's actually been worked on. Like people are working on the subsidy system, vegan activists and stuff like this. So definitely super important. And also, like what my view on it is that I think it's gonna be kind of impossible to have legal change before we get enough of the population to agree with it.
And yeah, I do see that, and you know that like farmers and ranchers are like a huge block of like, they're a voting block. So it is very hard to like put that kind of pressure legislative-wise. It sounds like what you're saying is that the best way to stop this industry is to create the demand for products that aren't this way.
And to remove from this industry so that they're not viable anymore. And also, the more people that are vegan, the more you have to work with for efforts in terms of legislative pressure. So without these vegans, you can't really do anything in the first place, right? Because these are the people who are gonna have the motivation to do even more, right?
Do you think that climate policies could have an impact on this? Because as you know, a lot of methane, a lot of CO2 is coming from big animal industries because it's just an animal byproduct in that sense. Do you think that climate policies could have a big impact on that?
Have you heard about the plant-based treaty?
The plant-based treaty, not by name, no.
Well, it's basically an organization like that's trying to push this for the climate thing.
So it's an organization fighting for specifically climate change bills?
Well, it's focusing on how a plant-based diet and a vegan lifestyle can basically remove so many problems from, like, it's one of the biggest, I mean, I've actually heard someone say it's the biggest thing you can do as an individual because animal agriculture is, and I'm talking small farms as well, they're taken into account, is one of the leading causes of, like you said, climate change and environmental destruction. So it's like the strategy of like, well, look guys, this is the easiest way to do it on an individual level, right? And so we could implement that. Like, it's one of the easiest ways to go about fixing the problem, And of course, with that comes like the animals not having their lives taken and being exploited, and also it has some health benefits as well. Sure. So if you do it well planned. Right. All right. So personally, what would prevent you from living vegan?
Personally, what would prevent me from living vegan is probably money. Vegan products right now are expensive. That's probably the major thing for me right now. You have to get a balanced diet. You have to get all these things. And any ethical choice comes at a markup. So that's probably the biggest difficulty. And that's probably a big difficulty for a lot of people right now. How do I budget this? I imagine for a lot of people it's also convenience. It's so easy to just go to the store, spend $20 on a grocery list right there. But with a vegan diet, it does have a markup. It does have a lot more expense to it. Typically it does.
Okay, I hear that a lot from people, actually. Sure. And it makes sense because when we think about vegan products, like obviously vegan diet, we think about all like, like the fake meats and stuff like this, right? Which makes total sense because that's what I mean, that's what we hear, that's what we associate it, right? All right, so basically something that's really cool to know is that there was a 2021 study, was a huge study done in 150 countries around the world.
Okay.
And so they basically found out that a vegan diet is 30% cheaper than a non-vegan diet, especially in the countries like, how you call it? Western countries, sorry.
So,
like
yeah.
the US.
Okay.
Personal stories. I mean, I'm broke. I live on one income that's a cashier's income with my husband,
Yeah.
and we're both vegan.
Okay.
I mean, and it's really, it's mind-boggling how easy it is to,
Alright.
I mean, we eat a lot of processed vegan foods as well, because like we don't really struggle with money in terms of that, and our rent is crazy too. Even if you really had if you struggled even more with money and you really wanted to be extremely healthy, even if these processed foods are not necessarily that bad, but if you want to be really healthy and really good with money, you can always go with the cheapest foods in the store, which is like beans, lentils, rice, pasta, all this stuff, and yeah, so that's really something that's good to know, because a lot of people think it is extremely expensive, and it makes sense because also these products don't have subsidies as much,
Yeah.
so. But like I would say also it's kind of like non-vegan products, like some are more expensive than others, of course. I don't necessarily buy the far end, like the super pricey ones, but I'll go with like the Walmart ones, which,
Yeah.
so that's always a good option.
I've definitely looked into like things that are like halal or something, or stuff that like has like that seal of approval that says animals did not suffer in the creating of this. That's very expensive investment. That stuff's very expensive.
But that's interesting because we talked about it earlier, right? And it's like, can you actually, because also halal slaughter is particular. It's interesting that they call it humane as well, because when you actually watch what it is like, it's just without stunning. It's just cutting like
It
sling.
just cuts the throat and just lets it bleed dry,
So
right?
is that, if that's humane, would we want that done to ourselves, or is it necessary? Like that's the question.
Yeah, I don't know.
When we're at the store in the supermarket, it's really easy to be disconnected from what's happening to the animals, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's kind of important to, it is really important actually, to each time that, we buy or we eat these things, remembering that these animals are individuals, right? That each time have been suffering and exploited and killed on our behalf, right?
How do we change this industry as well? It's just, you just get people to feel. You just get people to feel, you get people to care. It's probably our best way to change people's minds, is just get people to see the soul in an animal. It's one of the best rallying cries for like a vegan kind of like movement or things like that as well. One of the biggest challenges for them starting up like a test tube meat industry was political pushback, because like the ranchers block is such a huge block. But like, get people to care about the animals and get people to put pressure on like political figures. I think that you can make a change in that direction, and I also think that you can just make a change with your money as well. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say one quick thing about the test tube thing.
Yeah, it's so bright. Sorry. I'm back.
All right, so so I think that would be a great ally to the vegan movement in terms of reducing the amount of animals killed, etc. The problem I have with it though is that they still require, like the science hasn't progressed to the point that they don't require animal cells, like from live animals to collect. So that's an issue, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, my issue would be also that I would be scared that by people still eating flesh, right, there would still be health issues in terms of like, like the bacteria, it's still a problem.
Sure.
And also that, the kind of, like, if we're still eating flesh, I would see more hunters and more fishermen, for example, to still going, like, doing these things because it's still normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be why also I have an issue with it. But I think it will definitely be a big help to a big help to the animals. But I would always, of course, push for veganism instead because of these issues.
Yeah. And hunting is going to be a very big tradition that's not going to change very quickly. I don't think that a lot of people are, because especially here in Montana, hunting is a huge thing here, and it's such a traditional thing that I can't see it possibly changing that fast. But I do see that being a small scale animal suffering. Whereas I see like grocery store meat being like a wide scale animal suffering. In numbers, if you want to see a change where you see no animal suffering by human hands, hunting's probably going to be one of like the last things to change. But when it comes to like grocery store meat and all that kind of stuff, I see that as like just it's all about money. It's all about money. It's all about numbers. I foresee that changing first.
Thank you so much for spending the time to talk with me about this.
Absolutely. Lucy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Good to meet you.
Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and see you in the next video.